Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, today we have a very interesting topic for discussion. We're going to be talking about data security. Is data the new battleground? Are we soon going to be pushed into digital warfare, as lack of a strong data security framework not only makes us vulnerable to threats from outside, but even in the area of commerce, our businesses are finding it hard to compete because our data paradigms, protection laws don't match global standards. To discuss this with me and also tell us exactly what the challenges are, I have Lieutenant General D.B. Shetkar. He was part of the Shetkar committee that suggested reforms to improve the Army's combat strategies. I have Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. We have, of course, Commodore Uday Bhaskar and Vineet Goenka, who is part of the IT task force in the Ministry of Shipping and also the Ministry of Railways. I'll begin with you, sir. Can you at least set us exactly what is the problem? Can you outline the problem before us?
The problem is simple. When we talk of data, 21st century is the century of knowledge power.
Yes.
The more knowledgeable you are, more powerful you will be. As opposed to 19th century, which was the century of muscle power. 20th century was the century of money power, where we all were born. And now this century is going to be the century of knowledge power.
Okay.
What is knowledge power? It is the data which you have. The more data you have, the more information you have. And the more information you have, better prepared you are. It is simple term, absolutely, on the things. Now, what is data? Why should we have data? See, the entire world where the security problems are coming up, the warfare is going on, nations are fighting, they don't even know whether they'll be surviving as a nation tomorrow morning. It is all because of 5 elements. One is the space, one is the sea or the water, one is the air, one is the energy, and one is the earth. All these 5 elements are connected to data. The more data you have about yourself, your opponent, your interested parties, you are better prepared. You decide. You are in a position to make a decision. Where should I go? Which country should be my target? Where should be my investment? These are all information warfare going on.
Okay.
And therefore, people are collecting data. They are mad after data today. There are 2 aspects of data. One is your data going out. The second, more dangerous, is the outside data coming to you and influencing the mind of your own people. That is more dangerous. Today we see all these modern gadgets, so-called. What are they feeding you? They're feeding you information.
You're talking about WhatsApp, Facebook,
everything,
etc.
You name anything. It is giving you information from where, which you may not even require. But aren't we seeing our children are getting influenced? We are getting influenced. We decide everything based on the data. So this is all the gamut of data. Okay. Now connected to national security. Depending on your data is available to the adversaries. I don't want to name them, but we know where they are and who they are. They are using this data to create problem within our own country, dividing the society, dividing the social strata. This is all going on. We are watching and we are suffering for this. This is all based on data. There is research work going on.
Okay.
They are also collecting the data. What is your preparedness for war? How many days you can fight a war? How many days you can survive without depending on anybody else? This is all connected to data. They have the data. What weapons you have? What is the systems you have?
Okay.
All these things are there. So therefore, data will continue to be very useful in this century and forever. And that is the importance what we are looking for.
Your point of view on this?
So no, I completely agree that data is an issue, but when you process data, you get information. So at the same breath, General Shetkar was talking about information. The issue is that people take up data as the key issue, whereas information is the key issue. Now, if you pick up data as a key issue, then the corollary problem that comes up is that where will data reside?
Right.
Should data reside in India? Should we have data sovereignty? Is it a problem if it resides outside? The point is that, let me take an analogy before I put in the point, is that you have all the scripts of Harappan language. You got all the data of Harappan. Can you tell me what do the Harappans write? What have they written? You have the data, but it is meaningless to you. And therefore, it is inconsequential as to where the data resides. What is more important is what you're interpreting out of it. And more importantly, what is the knowledge you're creating out of it? When you process information further, you get the knowledge base which helps you predict. To take the examples that General Shetkar was saying, it will help you predict how much of capacity you have to do a warfare, how many days will your Air Force survive, your Navy survive, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the focus is more on the information knowledge than the core data per se.
Okay. But how important is data security for warfare?
Well, again, if I can pick up the thread from what General has said and Jaideep, I think first of all we have to accept that data is the primary block, and then there is a transition wherein data becomes information.
Right.
And then specific to national security, information has to be mined for intelligence. And finally, the output of this information come intelligence, say hypothetically in a military situation, should lead to some kind of wisdom, strategic wisdom about whether to act in one manner or the other. So I think first of all that has to be kept in mind, that there is a kind of chain, a value chain, data to information to intelligence to finally the decision of whether to go down one path or the other. That having been said, I think General Shekatkar's point is very valid, that the 21st century is increasingly being mediated by this combination of data and information, and where it leads to depending on the skill sets that either the individual has or the institution has or the nation has. And I think Prime Minister Modi has picked this up very well, because I think at Davos and in other fora he's made the same point, that the 21st century is all about data and information, and we in India have an advantage. But if we talk only about national security, I would say there are two sort of broad points, and I'll defer to Mr. Goenka. One is that we need to do a lot more in terms of giving directivity to our existing, broadly you might call it cyber security, information security, data security. We know that certain activities need to be pursued, but my sense is that we are still operating below the median, and I'm only talking about the armed forces. There are all kinds of national security issues. There is banking, there is national power grid, you name it, data information is relevant. But as a security analyst, I would say that one issue that we have said repeatedly, and I think the Shekatkar committee made the same point, India should have had a cyber command by now to deal with information warfare, as we call it. But for a variety of reasons, the political leadership of this country has not yet come to that point to bite that bullet. So let me stop here and say that I think we know it in terms of software, but we have not been able to implement and do better than what we are doing just now.
And we don't even have a data commissioner. I know, Vineet, you're working on a framework, a data protection framework. How will a law over here, how will we apply it in other countries? Where does India compare globally?
See, we do not have a policy right now which defines what is data protection, and I think Justice B. N. Sri Krishna is doing Justice B. N. Sri Krishna is working fantastic on that. He has written a white paper, asked for a public debate, and this kind of forums will help him out to understand what it is. My concern is mix of what all the three seniors over here have said. It is a simple thing like, somebody stealing my data. When I land in Delhi and I get a car integrator saying that he will provide me 50% discount on my travel. How does he know that I have landed in Delhi? That's a small, simple thing where my data has been pulverized, or he knows where I am at. Or there is a strategic thing. When we were sitting in the CRIS, that is Railways Information System we're talking about, if there is a train which has been used to ship our important strategic assets from point A to point B, and an enemy state knows about it, then what does happen? Without firing a single bullet, he can create embarrassment for us. Now, this kind of data, when it travels across the borders, then it's a travel. So, people like me who are champions or who would like to advocate data sovereignty, saying that the data should be within the precinct of the country, be it be e-commerce data, be it be social media data, or maybe it be strategy data. That's why we have been recommending, or we have been advocating, saying that the data should not travel outside the precinct of the country. It should be a data sovereign country. We should have a sovereignty policy about data. And that's what my paper to request to Justice B. N. Sri Krishna was also, that we should also have a law where we say that data will reside within the precinct. And so the lawmakers and the law enforcing agencies can have access to this data when required.
So would you look to China as a model? China is doing that very
I would
effectively.
differ. China has a censure. There is a difference between censorship and data sovereignty. I believe every Indian is very mature to understand what he should visit, what he should not do. I would not like to dictate anything what a person does. A matured Indian can understand where does he go and stop. That is his personal choice. It is his own upbringing, whether he's seeing site A or site B. That's not my lookout. I am saying any site or any business transaction or any data, there are 4 million texts per minute. You can understand the huge volume which is being generated. Yeah, and the amount we see, the data analytics business itself is more than $2 billion. Yesterday they came to buy spices. They ruled us. Today they would come here to trade some small 400 rupees URL from you, and then they would rule you through having a colonization. It can be data colonization stage. So we will have to preempt this and say that if you want to do business with us, come put your servers in India, let them be physically here, let the data be here, and we will allow it to do business. So there is nothing called a censorship like China. Okay. So we do not mix this socialist pattern with our democratic patterns.
All right.
If I may,
please.
it's a very interesting point you raised. I'm glad you mentioned this point. Should we be concerned about China? Of course, we should be concerned about the whole world. But I think my understanding, and since I was the chairman of this committee, we should have our own model.
Which?
What is the data we must protect? What is the data the world, our adversaries, or our opponents, or our competitors?
That's what I want to ask you.
are
What is
looking
good
forward?
data? What is bad data?
See, any data is good data, or any data is bad data. Suppose there is a data available. If our adversary uses against us, it becomes bad for us. But if we are using for something else, then it becomes good for us. I would not like, because this is a slightly a controversial issue, but this is part of our committee. We have recommended what the commander is saying, absolutely correct, that we are almost about 15 to 20 years back in establishing this command. A nation like us, on whom the world is having a hope now, if we remain 20 years behind in information warfare, in data collection, in data security, there is something wrong with us. I don't want to go into the political aspects of it. Madam, the point is, world is looking at India with a great hope.
Right.
Hope of different types, which is a great matter of pride for us. But that hope can be done away with if they know our secrets, if they know our vulnerability, if they know our strong points. Because in this 21st century, which we are calling a century of knowledge power, it is the biggest problem today to the world and any governing regime is perception management. How do you manage perception about yourself from the outside world? Second thing, that perception management makes another point is the image management. And if you fail in perception management, you fail in image management, then you be ready for the consequence management. That is what we have been reacting upon. And therefore, I agree with Mr. Vineet Goenka that secrecy of data, for you it may be useless data, but somebody will use it. The excellent example is the plague in Surat. I was in Army headquarters at that time. They collected the blood sample from the people on different attacks and see what they have done. They are playing very hell with us. We didn't bother about it. Thousands and thousands of blood samples were taken that time from Surat only in plague at that time, and they used this blood. They evolved this. So data is nothing else but information, and as rightly he said, information is power. If you want to be powerful, have that information, keep your information, and keep collecting from outside.
If I can take a liberty, and I'll give you a very interesting example, and a very civilian thing, without firing a single bullet, my enemy state can bring us down to knees. You go to railway station to board a Rajdhani from here to Mumbai, and you find me sitting there already on the same seat. You show your ticket, I show my ticket, and we both have the same ticket.
Right.
Same S1, berth number 1. Before we are arguing, Bhaskarji comes in. And by the time we three settle it, General Shekatkar comes in, and we all have the same ticket issued by our neighbors for us. How many constables do we have at a railway station? Say a battalion of a platoon of 90 people. By the time 4 constable comes and tries to pacify us, and this happens in 5 bogies at a simultaneous time, 5 trains in the station, it will be a situation which will not be handled by civilian or a simple constable standing there. And this happens in 10 different stations at a time. It can be a national disaster.
Right.
Enemy state will not fire a single bullet but bring you down on your knees. And by the time this is realized and rectified, we would have lost revenue, also lost face in the market. So sometimes you'll have to understand this has got a lot of lethal power than the kinetic war. Kinetic war, you know, it hits, it kills X number of people. But this war can kill more than X defined people. We are right now 5.8 zettabytes of data. And soon we will go to 25 zettabytes of data. You can understand the power which has been enormous. Here we allow this data to travel outside the borders. You are calling for slavery. You are calling for a slavery of which is not reversible. See, we are pained. India only has 2,000 or 2,000 plus patents been filed every year. Whereas a small country like Japan files almost around 52,000 patents. And that gives them a solid advantage there. Here, your institute would do a lot of research, the data, and the day when they are almost to file the patent or a research paper, somebody else would have just taken out your data and filed it, and they would learn what went wrong with you, not only what went right with you, but what went wrong with you. Now, these small 2 examples of railway station and research been stolen, this is an enormous fear for us. So, I think my request or everybody who is sensible would say, let us have a data sovereign policy in the country.
Would you agree with that?
I have a little, challenge in that framework is because the devil lies in the details. If we are looking at, let's say, policy where no data will go out of India, then obviously there will be a reciprocity from everybody else. If there's a reciprocity from US and Europe, what will be the status of my BPO and KPO industries? They'll have to shut down immediately because no data can come in. If we as India say no data can go out, then they can also say no data can come in. Second is, what is the outcome that we're looking at by saying that data won't go out? Is it that we'll have control over the information, which is more critical, rather than the data per se? Because data is junk unless we do something with it.
Yeah.
Now, if the data lies anywhere and we have control over it, then it doesn't matter. It's the sovereignty of the data, irrespective whether it's within the border or outside the border. If you look at the cyber bombing of the nuclear centrifuge of Tehran, was it data residing in the country that actually launched the attack? And as we now know, there were 3 countries involved, right? And none of them really had the control over what is the data that was lying there. Yet the attack was launched, yet the capabilities were destroyed without resorting to issues of the location of where the data is. And I think that issue carries on to even the policies around letting people access websites or not access websites. It's simplistic to say that we have a policy of letting anybody see what they want or not letting people see what they want. Because if you look at the details of it, I mean, in fact, yesterday only I was part of a police modernization meeting where we were talking about the impact that women are having and the crime against women. Surprisingly, state after state was saying that more and more crime is happening in the cyber world. Okay. Now, if you do not have control, then how are you going to save our own citizens?
To hold that thought, I'm going to come back to you, but we need to take a quick break. And also, we want to thank General Chitatkar. He has to go and catch a flight. So thank you for being with us. And stay with us. We're going to continue this conversation, but after a short break. Hello and welcome back to NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week we're discussing data security. Commodore Bhaskar, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on the 2 points made by Jaideep and Vineet. I think, when we talk about data, we are already living in a world which is truly global in terms of the collection of data, particularly those who are familiar with the current technologies that are available. I can cite 2 examples. Every time you use Google, it is collecting data. As he said, about your personal preferences. Are you coming from Mumbai to Delhi? Do you need a taxi? Or do I like rum and water? Or do I like rum and soda? This is the degree to which there is granularity, that when you are using Google or even WhatsApp or any of the current social media kind of options. So we have to accept this as part of globalization. I want to make 2 limited points. When Vineet says that we have to be very, very now careful about data flowing out, my point is that may be desirable in certain cases, but it's unlikely that you can actually make it feasible because most of young India wants to be wired with the rest of the world. So unless you say that I have an Indian equivalent of a WhatsApp or a Facebook or a Google, you may not be able to prevent in democratic India the citizen from making these choices. That's one. The second, what Jaideep has said, I think what we now need is India needs to become more, I think, effective in terms of the regulation of data at the global level, because at the moment I think we are consumers. The regulations are being made by someone else. There is ostensibly an international body, but all the main hardware is outside of India and we do not really know what is happening. So I think data and information actually even kicks into issues like WTO. We are talking about a whole range of industries that are dependent on these capabilities, which start from data, which is your building block, but it's essentially neutral. And I think India needs to do a lot in terms of understanding the entire ecosystem, acquiring the capacity from lawyers to professionals to people in commerce and marketing and to those in ethics. And I would say even in issues like morality, because today data, cyber covers such a wide spectrum of human endeavor. And I think we are just really scratching the tip of the iceberg now in terms of how it affects the security of the individual and the security of the state.
If you can add to that, if you can permit me, just adding to what Commodore Bhaskar mentioned, in terms of how are we really controlling these new roads? We have an issue with one belt, one road, but the new roads are actually digital, right? To the point, who's controlling the internet? It was initially being controlled under a contract by ICANN, and the contract was from Department of Commerce, Government of US. So typically the thought process is that internet is free, nobody owns it, it's freely available. It is not the case, and we should wake up. It was then transitioned to a board wherein there is representation from multiple countries, and that board runs ICANN. Well, point one, ICANN is registered in US, and therefore it's under the jurisdiction of US, and therefore it's also under the Patriot Act of US, which means that if ICANN is directed by the US government to do anything in the interest of the US government, it has to do so. On the board of ICANN, there is not a single Indian. There hasn't been an Indian. There has been actually nobody else, because the ICANN became kind of free only 2 years ago when the contract from the US government expired. But more importantly, of the 13 root servers, there are actually not 13 servers, but 13 clusters, not a single one of them is in India. So what are we really controlling? When we're talking about data control, we do not have the means as of now to control. Let me just put one more dimension to it, is that we're only talking about internet as a part of the cyberspace. There's a separate infrastructure of mobile. There's a separate infrastructure of apps in the mobile. And the reason I'm mentioning that is when you triangulate, that is, you take information from mobile, from internet, from WhatsApp, from Facebook, and you put it together, the kind of information I'll get is significantly more powerful than what you can get on a single platform. And all of that is getting mapped in one way.
And also, he's talked about the apps, which brings us to the mindset of, we are voluntarily disclosing so much information on all these apps that how do you find a task of surveillance?
So we have to go to the old theory that there is no free lunch. And I always wonder, why does WhatsApp give us free of cost? And see the perfection. They have given you voice, video, everything. You make groups, you make broadcasts, and they have not charged anybody till now. I don't know a single person on this earth whom they have charged. And what is their motivation? And then my strategic thinking says that the motivation is to know where you are, whom you are connected with. You have already allowed them to access your mobile data, which has got photographs, which you have got your contact details, everything. Now, if you have to compete with this, and what Dr. Jaji said, do we have these kind of capabilities inside here? We have CDAC, we have CDOTs, we have IITs. We'll have to encourage them to come out with inventions. We have to come out and encourage them to come out with this kind of apps. Can we have Samvad from CDOT been implemented across the country and say that if you do this, you get this kind of money from the central government? Do you excite some IIT there? Then IIT Guwahati comes up and says that they will make this app, which is freely available for the entire country. You run that, make them a world-class app, let the Americans migrate on it, and then say, hey, now WhatsApp, either you bring the servers to India or we close you down. So you rightly said, sir, you cannot deny them the service, but we will have to encourage. I always wonder one thing, sir, and you will have to enlighten me on this. We got independence in 1947. Israel, I think, was 50s?
Yes.
4950.
4950s. And Israel is not even the size of NCT. Longest two distance is 82 kilometers or so. Something. Maybe, if I'm wrong, then it may be 90 kilometers or 100 kilometers, not more than that. It's not equivalent. How come they come in the last 60 years, establish themselves as the security apex of the country, and they say that we have technology which you have to buy and nobody else can do it? What is wrong with my country is not that we don't have the facility. The wrong is we don't encourage our students, our people, to come out with inventions. As I said, only 2,000 patents a year, whereas a small country like Japan has 50,000. If they encourage them, saying that we'll have to do this.
But it may be outside the ambit of your show as to why Israel does what it does and why India does not do what it should do, but maybe some other time.
Not on data. Okay.
But picking up the point on, with your permission, on just the knowledge part and the IP part, I would challenge you to go and try file a patent in India. It is humongously difficult to do so.
As with
It's
most
extremely expensive.
We'll have to create the environment.
Ecosystem. Let me sort of repeat this, I would say as many times as is possible. I think India's greatest handicap is that we have not nurtured or enabled our own talent. And I think across the board, in any particular discipline, I think the regrettable part, and a quick sort of response to what Vineet has said, it's also about strategic cultures. And I think our own society, our own people have not enabled to allow talent to really grow. And I can give you chapter and verse only in the limited context of the military domain. Give me a 30 seconds, Priya. I want to make this point, but just to say that today, maybe half of India does not know that an Indian scientist has been admitted into the Hall of Fame, which has people like Albert Einstein. It has barely 450 people, and Professor Paul Raj has been admitted from Stanford as of last 2 weeks. He was in the Indian Navy and he had done some pioneering work in sonar, which is the submarine detection. The Indian ecosystem could not deal with him, so they ejected him, and he went to Stanford and he filed maybe 100 patents, and now he's admitted into the Hall of Fame. So that's the answer, Vineet, to what you were raising.
Okay, but we're totally out of time. But we're discussing data security at a time when concerns are being raised about security regarding Aadhaar card, Aadhaar data details. Those are more at an individual level. Here, of course, we've raised it to a whole new level, talking about national security also. But that's it for now. We'll see you again same time next week.